Hey, you guys, I'm just making sure I don't have a buzzing sound.
You sound good to me.
Okay, well, I'm at home, so I actually haven't tested out the
I'm just making sure I don't have a button.
office yet. So, okay, well, thank you.
Okay, we had an echo there, but I think we fixed it, so I think you're good.
Candy, did you just open your Pepsi?
I did. I'm ready for a meeting.
I knew it. I heard it.
I'm ready. What time is it?
5:59.
One
Okay.
minute to go.
I just went and got my shot.
Awesome. I get my second one on Monday.
My husband said that gave him a headache and he was sleepy.
Which one did you get?
Moderna.
Oh, see, I've had Pfizer and so did my husband, and we didn't have any reaction at all.
Brad only did on his second one.
Huh. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll be fine. At least we have them.
Yep, we have them. Well, it's 6 o'clock, kids.
Let's play.
Okay. It's 6 o'clock and I'd like to call this meeting of the Midvale City Planning Commission to order. I've been asked by Midvale City staff to read the following. This meeting will be an electronic meeting without a physical location pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-207 as amended by House Bill 5002. Chair Candy Tippett, as Chair of Midvale City Planning and Zoning Commission, hereby makes a determination that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. This determination is based upon the fact that the city is unable to ensure compliance with the guidelines and public health protocols mandated by the state's current risk phase. As restrictions limiting public gatherings occur across the state, Midvale City wants to ensure everyone interested in participating in planning commission meetings can do so. Public comments are read into the record by city staff during the public hearings portion of the meeting. If you would like to make a public comment, please send an email to Alex Murphy at amurphy@midvale.com. When commenting, please limit your comments to 400 words or the equivalent of 3 minutes. Include your first and last name. It's optional to include your city of residence. Include the name of the agenda item so city staff know when you want your public comments to be read into the record. City staff will read into the record the equivalent of 3 minutes. Your input is important to us, so please keep your comments concise. Kate, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Tippett,
Here.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Costello,
Here.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
and Commissioner Benson.
Here.
And Commissioner Snow is excused tonight.
Before we begin with the public hearing portion of the meeting, we have agenda item 1, which is the review and approval of the minutes of the February 24th, 2021 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Are there any corrections, additions?
Didn't find any.
If everyone finds those to be correct, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 24th.
I move
Hey.
that we approve the minutes for February 24th.
I second it.
Kate, can we get a vote, please?
Yes. Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Yes.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Yes.
and Commissioner Erickson.
I was not there, but
Okay.
I wasn't there either, but I did it anyway.
Okay, so we will now move on to the public hearing portion of our meeting. To keep the meeting as orderly as possible, I will ask that everyone in the Zoom meeting mute themselves when not speaking. This makes it easier for everyone to hear and to transcribe the meeting in preparation of the minutes. I'd also ask that the applicant state their name for the record before speaking or answering a question. For this meeting, the process for the items shall proceed as follows. I will introduce the item, followed by a presentation by staff. The attorney's office will provide some information on the Planning Commission's role for the item. The applicant will be allowed an opportunity to present. I will then open the public hearing. The public hearing will be closed after a motion by the commission. The commission will have any additional discussion. I will then ask for commission action. A vote will be taken and I will announce a decision. With that, we will jump right into the action items. So agenda item number 2 is a public hearing for 7488 South Casablanca Drive, rezone from regional commercial to residential multifamily medium to high density. AJ Schaefer of Ward Engineering is the applicant. Jana Ward will present for staff. Jana?
All right, thank you, Candy, and good evening to everyone. I think you should be able to see my screen. And I'm just going to jump right in. This project's going to look familiar to everyone. The Planning Commission approved a rezone request for this property on June 10th of 2020, along with a conditional use permit and a preliminary site plan for an 8-unit housing development. The City Council denied the rezone request on August 4th of 2020, and the applicant has revised his proposal based on public comments received during that review process. So the subject property is located in a regional commercial zone and is adjacent to properties zoned RM25 to the north and east, SF1 to the south, and SF1 with the duplex overlay to the west. Section 17-3-1 of the Midvale City Municipal Code requires the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and adopt a written recommendation to the City Council, advising the City Council to approve, disapprove, or modify a request for a zoning map amendment. The Planning Commission may only recommend approval of a rezone application if it determines in written findings that the proposed rezone is consistent with the policies and goals of the general plan, and that the applicant has demonstrated the following. So these are the 3 kind of criteria to be granted a rezone. We're going to look at number 3 for this request. The land or its surrounding environments has changed or is changing to such a degree that is in the public interest to encourage redevelopment of the area or to recognize the changed character of the area. Let's see. Sorry, I have to keep going back and forth. So these are zoning maps from 1983 and 1992. The zone, this is the piece of property, this triangle piece right here, and this again right here. So in 1983, this whole section was commercially zoned. And sometime between 1983 and 1992, there was a rezone to residential multifamily on both sides of the road for 2 different apartment complexes, leaving this alone as the only commercially zoned property. I'm just going to go back to this. So now you can see this whole area has been rezoned, and this is how it exists today. With the surrounding multifamily projects having been rezoned from commercial properties, it would be in the public interest to encourage residential development on these parcels. And retaining the existing zone would allow a commercial use to develop on the site, which could lead to greater impacts on the surrounding neighborhood than are expected with the requested multifamily residential zoning. So the general plan has this as a stability area. And goal number 1 in those stability goals are to support property maintenance and neighborhood stability. And number 6 is to provide mechanisms for appropriate home remodeling to occur to accommodate today's lifestyles and needs. A rezone will allow the property to continue as a residential use. This property is currently a non-conforming single-family home and has been under continual residential use. The city has no record of a business license being issued for commercial use at this property. Also, goal 3 of the housing plan adopted in 2019 is to expand the variety of housing opportunities to allow more choices in types and locations of residences, including providing for a mixture of housing sizes, densities, types, and affordability in each area of the city. And the project aligns with that goal by providing an opportunity for a residential use to remain on this property. So previously this was reviewed, like I said, in conjunction with a site plan and a conditional use permit. That was to streamline the process, but it is not required of a rezone. A rezone does require a concept plan, so we have an idea of what they're proposing. But this concept plan has not had a formal review. There is no formal application. So we can look at this. Of course, we want to look at it, but there are some technicalities and questions we can answer. I want to do the best we can to answer, and we do have public comment. But I just want to remind you that this plan has not been reviewed. The applicant, or it will require a staff review of the site plan and an administrative conditional use permit to allow multifamily if the rezone is approved. There's still a conditional use permit, administrative, for the multifamily housing on a 1/2 acre to a 1 acre in size. So this is the site plan. And as far as just like a quick review, of course, I have done a quick review and it meets the requirements. And if they've changed, and you, I'm sure, remember the public comment, the biggest comment was traffic accessing the project from Casablanca. So they do have a UDOT, it's a preliminary approval. They've talked to UDOT, but they're also closing 2 and bringing it down to 1. So it shouldn't be a problem with UDOT. And then making, this is going to be ground level parking, and level 2 and 3 are multi-story units. So 8 units that are 2 stories. And then the 4th has 4, one floor units, single floor units with some amenity space here. There's also a step back requirement based on height, because this would be a single family home here. So they can have 35-foot height for 50 feet, and then they can go back up. So as far as like a quick review, they're meeting it. And I think it's the same as a quick concept. They haven't like vetted this whole concept plan, but they have addressed the main concerns of the residents by accessing off of 900 East. I also want to mention that there is currently open code violations on the property that will need to be resolved before a building permit can be issued. Officer Wayne is working with the owner of the property to resolve these violations. A no-cause notice to vacate was served on February 11th, 2021, and these violations do not interrupt the process of a rezone request, but they will need to be addressed before any further permits or licenses are granted for the property. And you probably may have heard public comment, and there'll be a little bit of public comment regarding the state of the current residents. So we are going to have the applicant on here, but I can answer any questions you have to start.
We probably should also hear from our city attorney about what our purpose is here this evening.
Thank you, Chair. So tonight, this is with a rezone request, this is a legislative action. This means that you're looking at, you have a lot more flexibility than you have with your administrative decisions. You're looking to see if there are those mandatory findings that need to be made. And if they're not, you can reject, you can provide a recommendation to deny the rezone. This body is not the body that will be making the final decision about the rezone. You're just providing a recommendation to the city council, but you can provide what information you would like them to consider, either positively or negatively, for this rezone request.
Thank you, Garrett. If the applicant's present, Mr. Schaefer, we'd like to hear from you too, if you have any additional comments.
Mr. Schaefer is not here, but he's the engineer for the applicant. The applicant is here, and I'm also his engineer, so we are here to answer any questions.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add to Jana's presentation?
No, well, Jana has been great listening to us and walking us through the city's process. We are anxious to get going with this project. for a lot of reasons. Obviously, economics is one of them. And we think that this definitely meets the neighborhood request that we had in terms of traffic. It's more expensive of a project for us, but we're just gonna go forward with it.
Commissioners, before we open the public hearing, do you have any comments?
I do not.
As far as the tenant that is there, Jana, did you want me explain that also?
I think we'll just go ahead and see if there's a lot of public comment regarding that and see if we need to
Okay.
address it.
All right.
Jana,
Mhm.
you're aware that I got a letter from one of the residents?
I am not unless I was
I don't
included.
know if you were CC'd on it or not, but from the Wills.
Oh yeah, I have one from the will.
Yeah, it's probably the same thing, but she sent it to me as well. And you
Okay.
got the photos?
Yeah, so yep, I have that one.
Okay, as long as, you know,
I sent those to you. I'm not gonna put those up on the screen, but everyone should have the public comment, including the photos in your email.
right, yeah, we got it. Anyway, I got that personally just because I know her.
Okay.
So I'm sure that's why. I mean, obviously, you know, they addressed the issue that we had with them coming in and the residents on Casablanca, but I can't believe how it deteriorated since the last time we held a meeting on that. I mean, that is, I mean, talk about a contrast.
Mhm.
I mean, I hope that gets taken care of quickly. Will it?
Yes, it's in the court, actually. The judge was supposed to sign it today, but I don't know. I haven't talked to attorney, see if he did, and go lock the door basically and block the doors and all this stuff. All the meters and the stuff take out basically, so these people, they move. I want to just add that I had no fault of, I didn't rent to these people. They were squatters moved in, unfortunately, and I couldn't move them. I couldn't move them until December, the end of December, because of COVID law. And from January we started moving these, trying to move these people out. So it's going to be done this week, for probably for sure, according to my attorney.
That's good.
Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and open this up for public comment now. This is the portion of the agenda that allows any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, or issues. If you would like to comment on a public hearing item, you will be allotted time during this portion of the meeting. Please email your comments to alexmurphy@amurphy@midvale.com. We will not be taking public comment on the Facebook or YouTube feeds. When commenting, please limit your comments to 400 words, which is the equivalent of 3 minutes. Include your first and last name. You may include your city of residence, but that is just optional. And you need to include the name of the agenda item. City staff will only read into the record the equivalent of 3 minutes, so please be concise with your statements. With that, the public hearing portion of this is open. Jenna, I know we've already received some public comments. Do you want to go ahead and present those?
Kate will be reading the public comment.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read those. Okay, my name is Linda Willis and I live on the property just south of the property being considered for rezoning. I've looked over the new plans for the development of 7488 Casablanca Drive, and I am in favor of the rezoning. Last year, the neighbors were against the rezoning because of concerns of increased traffic and the fear that the new residents would park on the streets. However, the new plan has access to the townhomes from 9th East. This should alleviate their concerns. For the past year, we have dealt with the people who have lived on this property. We have had our garden inundated with mice and garbage stacked against our fence. We've been awakened in the middle of the night by the sounds of tow trucks, repossessing cars, and people using power saws. We've had to pick up syringes on our property because before we can allow our grandchildren to play in our yard. We have seen police cars over there several times a week. We've watched cars going in and out of this property. One morning while eating breakfast, I wrote down what I observed. Green truck leaves pulling a white truck. Green truck returns, white car pulls up. Green truck leaves again pulling a white car. Blue car leaves, green truck returns, red car leaves. Somehow I don't think townhomes would have more traffic than that. And now that the entrance is off 9th East, this shouldn't even be a concern. As far as cars parking on the neighborhood streets, everyone else has their visitors park on the street. And with the entrance off of 9th, I believe this is another non-issue. This has been our view of that property from our yard. And then she provided some pictures. She added, the other day I drove over to the townhomes built on the south side of the neighborhood. Here are some pictures that I took, which you guys should have in your email. She states, this is a much better view than what I have from my yard. Which property would you rather live by? I'm highly in favor of the rezoning. This makes much more sense than having one parcel of commercial property surrounded by residential properties. Sincerely, Linda Wills. Okay, the next comment. Attention, Midvale City Planning Commission. I would like to comment and pose a few questions about the proposal for 7488 Casablanca Drive. When I got the notice that there was another rezone request for this property, I was concerned about what was going to be proposed this time. So when I first got a copy of the plans from Jana Ward, I was relieved to see that one of our many concerns was actually resolved, that being how the units would be accessed. I would like to offer a personal thank you to AJ Schaefer and Ward Engineering for listening to our voices, that we did not want an access point into townhomes / apartments from the neighborhood for an RM25 development. I do have some questions and concerns that I would like to be addressed and answered. The 10-page PDF states on page 5 that there are 12 units and 29 parking spaces, but page 10 shows a 4-story building with pages 6, 7, and 8 showing plans for 20 units with 42 total parking spaces required. How does the developer plan to meet the additional parking required if there are in fact 20 residences? I noticed that while there are 2 disabled parking spaces, there isn't an elevator access to any of the floors with living residences. How will this be addressed? I'm concerned with overflow parking. As the plan is currently presented, it does not meet city code. But even if the developer were to eliminate 8 of the units to meet city code, I am concerned with the access from the neighborhood into the apartments. No other apartment complex is this way in our area. I could easily see that Casablanca Drive and Casa Negra Drive would become overflow parking, something we were extremely concerned about with this developer's last proposal. I would like the plan to require a barrier wall to not allow access from the neighborhood into the apartments. Is the Planning Commission willing to stop this proposal from passing for now while these concerns / questions are addressed in more detail by the developer? My last concern is regarding this question. If this rezone request is approved by both the Planning Commission and City Council, does the developer have to stay with this plan, or can he revert back to his original plan of 8 townhomes with access to Casablanca Drive from May / June of last year? Thank you for your time in answering my questions and concerns. Sincerely, Michael Densley. Okay, we are grateful. The proposed main entrance / exit to these Midvale apartments is 9th East instead of Casablanca to Casa Negra Avenue. We don't want to see traffic enter and exit into our neighborhood. We oppose the traffic since the vehicles would pass by 29 houses to get to 10th East. This would jeopardize the integrity of our quiet neighborhood where many children live and play. We also oppose any consideration to reopen Casa Negra Avenue. We processed that closure with the county over 25 years ago because it was a clear path from I-15 to 10th East. We are concerned about the sidewalk and trash pickup entrance into our neighborhood. We don't put our trash cans next to our neighbor's yard and then expect pickup through their property. That's what this proposal does. The apartments put trash on the property line, and then the dumpster pickup goes through our neighborhood from Casablanca. We propose that the dumpster is accessed through the apartment's main entrance from 9th East only and not Casablanca. We oppose the sidewalk connecting to the existing Casablanca sidewalk. If the 29 parking stalls aren't adequate for these units, the overflow would not be onto 900 East. There is not room for extra parking there. Overflow parking would come to Casablanca and Casa Negra and allow residents and visitors to walk directly to their apartment. There is no need to access these apartments from our neighborhood. They must be independent of nearby properties. We propose a retaining wall to block up Casablanca and Casa Negra Avenue. No sidewalk access, no trash collection, and no fire lane allowed. Walking traffic, trash collection, and fire hydrants need to be contained on their property. Royal Ridge and Union Village apartments have trash collection, walking access, and fire hydrants within their own property and not through our neighborhood. We disapprove with RM 25 zoning for this property. We're sandwiched with Chad's Fords, Royal Ridge, Union Village, Creekview, Hill Creek, Pinehurst, and Hillcrest High School main entrance, and the new large 4-story development of over 200 apartments flowing onto 900 East and South Union Avenue. The congestion on 900 East is unconscionable now. Please consider rezoning RM 12 instead of RM 25. Thank you for listening to our concerns. George and Susan Mathis. And the last one, my name is Jeannie O'Hara. I live at 818 Casa Negra Avenue. I oppose rezoning 7488 Casablanca Drive to an RM 25 zone. My reasons are as follows. Parking. Tentative plans show the primary entrance from 900 East, but pedestrian access to the property from Casablanca still exists. I am thankful that our concerns about the primary access point were integrated. However, parking remains an issue. There are only 29 parking spaces, but potentially 64 plus individuals/cars. Overflow parking will be forced to nearby streets, causing traffic congestion and safety concerns. In addition, Midvale Ordinance 10.16.120 prohibits parking on city streets where 1 inch of snow or more has accumulated and for 24 hours after. As it snows frequently here, this is an issue. A reasonable solution is to completely close off access to Casablanca except for garbage removal, thereby making it less appealing to park on Casablanca or Casa Negra. Increased load. There are multiple developments within 1 mile of this property, including the large apartment complex being built on South Union Avenue and 900 East. We have hundreds more people and cars already added to our infrastructure. Continuing to add to this strain is unwise. Our concern before was the number of people and cars added to this small area. This new plan shows even more people occupying the same space. Trust. The owner/developer has shown disregard for the neighborhood. He previously didn't follow the city council's guidance multiple times, including to speak with us. I do not trust him. I fear that once the plot of land is rezoned, he will modify these initial plans in order to add more units or change the entry point back to Casablanca. I respectfully request that approval from UDOT for 900 East access be confirmed prior to any rezone approvals. This location is far better suited to single-family homes as it was obviously intended to be given the single-family home there for decades. Although this means less money for the developer, it is far better fit for this community. At the very least, consider an RM 12. I realize the Planning and Zoning Commission is tasked with making decisions for the appropriate growth for our community. I ask you to reflect on the extreme amount of growth already happening and deny this rezone request. Thank you for your time, Jeannie O'Hara. Oh, sorry, there is one more. Hello, we are still opposed to the rezone. Dense housing is still not a fit for this neighborhood. The current plans are incomplete and raise many questions. The access from the back of the complex still opens opportunities to be used as overflow parking, and the current plan seems to not have enough as is. They're incomplete. Maybe the builder has no intention of using them. Nothing stops them from getting the rezone with this and then reverting back to the old plans. In our last meeting, it was shown that the builder had no concerns for the residents that live here. All of my concerns from the last rezone attempt still stand and should be pulled from record if needed. Some of my new concerns are how the property is currently being managed. Residents there have made it into a mechanic shop that works through the night. It's hard to say if they have the proper permits or not. Is it a reflection of how it will continue with even more people living there? The best fit for the neighborhood is to zone it to what it has been used for many years, or as stated by the builder at the end of the last meeting, build a small business there. I'm hoping many concerns and missing information can be presented at the meeting to help us understand everything that's going on. Kindly, Justin and Taryn McCormick at 842 East Casanova Ave.
Have any other public comments come in?
I don't have any new comments.
I have also not received any new comments.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Oh, Jinx.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. Kate, can we please get a vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Yes.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Yes.
and Commissioner Erickson.
Yes.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, do you have any comments regarding the public comments you would like addressed?
Candy, this is Colleen. I have one comment. Now, when the entrance comes off of 9th East, one of the people had mentioned that there was also going to be a entrance from the back side of the property that would open onto, is it Casablanca? And I'm just wondering if that will be closed off and there will just be the one entrance from 9th East.
So you can see on this concept plan, they've marked a garbage truck pickup access. They also have provided a fire plan where they would put which has not been reviewed by the fire department, but where the hydrant would be back here and they would access like fire.
For the fire, okay.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't actually be for the people that live in the complex or in the area to be able to access inside the area from the Casablanca?
No,
Okay.
I think it would be actually blocked by that dumpster
Yeah,
at
okay.
all times.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
There is a pedestrian connection though, right?
Oh,
On the
yeah.
concept?
Looks
Yeah,
like it.
okay.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments that either Jenna or the applicant can answer for us?
I had a question about, this is Candace. I had a question about the address because it was the way it is on the application. It still has it listed as Casablanca with the access coming from 9th East. So I'm wondering at what stage would that change? Because it doesn't seem very intuitive to have the address come off of what the public has said they don't want people to access it from.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the city engineer assigns addresses during those site plan reviews. So yeah, I'll definitely mention that to him if we could think about that.
Right, that would be unfortunate if it didn't get changed.
Mhm.
The concern by some of our residents' comments is that this is going to be too many units for this size. Can we clarify exactly how many units we're looking at for this property?
12 units.
And what's the max allowed?
Well, it's based on, it's 25 units an acre. So honestly, I don't think I've even done that calculation to see if
Based on
12 is allowed.
parking, really, parking controls it.
What'd you say?
Parking, not total number of parking really controls the number of units we can have, and 12 is the maximum we could have.
They have 0.66 acres. So like if you do just solely based on density, it's somewhere a little bit 13 or something.
Yeah, it could be more, but it's an odd shaped parcel.
Any other comments or concerns?
I have just one more question. On the east and on the south of the property, is there going to be a wall separating this from the residential area?
A fencing plan is required as part of the review. I'm imagining a fence already exists on this east side because it is multifamily. And yeah, they would build a fence here for the single family. But like I said, a fencing plan has not been submitted.
Okay.
I do have one more comment because I did talk to Keith, the city engineer, about those comments regarding access, and he reviews it from like a traffic impact viewpoint and says that no adverse impacts will be created by one garbage service a week, but we could introduce the idea of requiring it be in the daytime or in more reasonable hours in an HOA agreement.
I would do a motion if you have a slide with a motion on it. I don't have it up. Okay, based on the following findings, I move that we forward a recommendation to the Midvale City Council to approve the rezoning of 7488 South Casablanca Drive to the multifamily residential medium to high density zone, RM25. Do I need to read the findings?
Usually.
Okay, as stated in the staff report.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Kate, can we get a vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Costello,
Yes.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, that has passed, and we'll go ahead and make a recommendation to City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead then with agenda item 3. It is a public hearing regarding Mystic Cove 2 at 7835 South Holden Street, a conditional use permit and preliminary site plan for a 16-unit multifamily residential project. RM25 zone, Alex Winder for Lifetime Holdings LLC is the applicant. Jana Ward will present for staff. Jana?
All right, let me pull that one up. Oops. Okay. So this proposal, let's see, is phase 2 of Mystic Cove subdivision. Right here is phase 1. Which was approved February 2001 with 8 condominiumized twin homes accessed by a private drive running along the southern edge of the property. The existing private drive complies with the ordinance and will be extended to provide access to the new units. The combined property of both phases would be 1.92 acres with 165 feet of frontage on the east side of Holden Street. All surrounding uses are residential. The phase 2 proposal is 1.3 acres of vacant land. The 16 units will consist of 4 structures, a 7-unit building, a 5-unit building, and 2 2-unit buildings. Each structure will be 2 stories with parking inside 2-car garages and on the driveways. There's a pedestrian sidewalk network that connects each unit with the street and the amenity areas. Because the project was designed as an expansion of the existing Mystic Cove development, the lot standards, open space, landscaping, and parking requirements will be reviewed for the combined phases 1 and 2. A lot line adjustment was approved on the property to separate the project area from the existing home on 726 West Lenox Street right here. This was all one owner, and we moved a lot line from here to over here. And this will need to be recorded with the Salt Lake County Recorder's Office before the final site plan approval. So that's not part of this property. The RM25 zone allows multifamily residential uses with a conditional use permit. The general review criteria is listed in the staff report. Staff has not identified any apparent conflicts with provisions of the Midvale City General Plan or state and federal law. The general plan recognizes this Main Street / Old Town neighborhood as an opportunity area and expects to see significant changes in the development pattern as a result. The project is further supported by the city's 2019 housing plan by providing modest density in a neighborhood of opportunity and supporting reinvestment on a long vacant property. The proposed project is consistent with the zoning ordinance and other projects that have been approved recently in the area. General ordinance requirements for the RM25 zone are met through the review standard listed in the table. So the lot and development standards have been met with the exception of a lighting plan that would need to be submitted as part of a final site plan review. There are a few things to review in architectural and landscaping requirements. The parking requirements have been met, but I do want to talk about those further as well. Here are the elevations. There's no parking in the front yard. We consider the front yard facing the street and the rest are facing a private drive. So these are rear entry garages just for those front units. And that mirrors the same as phase 1. They have no parking in their front yard. And then these are along the east property line with front access garages. This is a 5-unit structure. And then the 7-unit structure with the colors being gray, stucco with white siding. Let's see. There are 14 3-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. The fencing, again, a fencing plan is required as part of a final site plan submittal. This fence here, the existing fencing, is also here at the edge of the roadway. The roadway is complete. It does have curb on both sides. So they'll be taking down the fence that exists, a precast concrete fence, and adding sidewalk to this side of the street. So staff recommends matching the existing fence surrounding the entire property. There is an exception in the zoning ordinance that you can have an 8-foot tall fence if you are neighboring single family homes. So they do have that option on this whole side, the south and the east. We do not have details. Details for the trash enclosure would be required to match and be enclosed on all 4 sides for that dumpster right there. As far as landscaping, there's a few things. We need a full landscape plan to include the entire site so that we can confirm that all the landscape requirements are met, as well as there's no landscape areas can be less than 2 feet in width or less than 5 feet in width. So these landscape islands in the driveways will either need to go away or be widened. And this section right here was only 3 feet. So they'll have to widen this landscape area to make it more friendly for plants to survive. And the current landscape plan does not meet the 25% evergreen requirement. So that will also need to be addressed as part of the final site plan. Each application for a multifamily use that exceeds 1 acre must meet specific criteria regarding open space and recreational amenities. So according to the submitted site plan, these have been met with 41% active and improved open space and 2,000 square feet of amenities. The open space includes landscape and recreation areas throughout the entire site, and the pedestrian network connects each unit to a pickleball court near the back of the property. So they have, you'll have to ask the applicant more about this little area, but each of these sidewalks, the crosswalk is here, it connects over, the crosswalks here connects, so that each door has a direct sidewalk to get to the amenities and to the street. Emergency vehicle access was reviewed by the fire marshal with comments to be addressed on the final site plan, and the preliminary site plan was approved by the city engineer, also with revisions to be addressed on the final site plan. Notice of the proposed conditional use and preliminary site plan was mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project, posted the city and state websites, and advertised in Deseret News. Oh, okay. And so I've basically talked about all these conditions. The only one I didn't talk about in the body of the staff report is that there will be a requirement to integrate with the existing HOA. So the maintenance and access agreement with Mystic Coast Phase 1 must be recorded with the Salt Lake County Recorder's Office before the final site plan is approved. I do have the rough draft of that, and the HOA president is on the call. So they are working toward that. So if you have any questions, I can answer those, and I know the applicant is here.
Garrett, do you want to make some comments on this?
Thank you, Chair. So this is an administrative review. If it meets the requirements of the conditional use permit and the site plan, we are required to approve it. If there are problems that need to be mitigated, then we need to identify what that mitigation would entail. And only if those issues are not able to be mitigated can we deny the application.
Thank you. Can we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Alex Winder. You need my address as well?
Yes, please.
It's 1169 West Corradine Drive in South Jordan, 84095. I guess I just wanted to say whenever I do a project, my name's on it, and so I try to do a good job. And on this project in particular, rather than having two streets and basically two neighborhoods, I thought it would be more appealing to people to have one street and make it more of a neighborhood feel and a place that people can gather. And so I don't know if you noticed on the site plan, there's an area, and it's called a block party area where the circles are. And so really we just wanted to have more of a community feel than have, just two closed off streets. So that's kind of why we designed it the way we did. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me, but I'm here to answer them.
Council, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. Is there enough parking? I'm not seeing parking on the one side. Is there enough parking?
I think Jana, you're muted.
Okay, so the parking is 2-car garages for every unit.
Okay.
Their garage or their driveways in the preliminary site plan are too narrow to consider them 2-car driveways. So they will probably have to redesign that, but they meet the standards with 1 stall per driveway.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for either Jana or the applicant?
I don't have any.
Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This is the portion of the agenda that allows any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, or issues. If you would like to comment on a public hearing item, you will be allotted time during this portion of the meeting. Please email your comments to alexmurphy@amurphy@midvale.com. We will not be taking public comment on the Facebook or YouTube feeds. When commenting, please limit your comments to 400 words, which is the equivalent of 3 minutes. Please include your first and last name. It is not necessary to include your city of residence, but you may if you wish. Include the name of the agenda item. City staff will only read into the record the equivalent of 3 minutes, so please be concise with your statements. With that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Jana, have we received any comments?
Kate will read, I believe, just 2 comments, and then I have 4 more so far in my email.
Okay, great.
Okay. As concerns the meeting this evening, the 10th of March, my wife and I at Mystic Cove Condominium have had very brief requests for input concerning this new addition, which shall be using our private drive. We have never had a vote as an HOA, which is in direct violation of our HOA rules/bylaws. My wife and I vehemently protest the going forward of this project if it is to use our private drive. The way this is being ramrodded over us here at Mystic Cove is insulting and in direct violation of our HOA compact. And we are very distressed and concerned about this situation. The developers looking at building next to our property can very easily put in their own private drive without ever infringing on our property. And they are aware of this. Their desire to use our private drive and the minuscule bonuses they promise us are a slap in the face. Again, the developer could easily provide the number of units they desire as well as their own private drive without ever infringing on our property, and they are aware of this. I would like this information shared during this evening's meeting. Robbie and Cynthia Cagle. And then I'll pull up this other one. Okay. I own the Mill Creek apartments adjacent to the proposed development, and I'm in opposition. Number 1, pickleball creates a loud, piercing pop, pop, pop sound. This sound can carry for quite a distance and drive neighbors crazy. Cases of conflict over pickleball noise are increasing rapidly as the sport becomes popular. A court within close earshot of over 50 families is simply not appropriate. This is of particular concern to our residents who work swing and graveyard shifts and those with children. A 2017 study by Thornton Acoustics found, and he provided the link, they found that pickleball noises create a human health risk as the link between certain types of noise, which includes the type of noise emitted by pickleball, and the risk of hypertension, heart disease is well established. Pickleball noise exceeds the limits of community noise ordinances. Pickleball noise exceeds accepted US and international standards and guidelines, such as those produced by the EPA and WHO, etc., for community and environmental noise emission levels. Pickleball noise significantly increases the community noise levels, and the relationship between community noise increase and human impact / annoyance is well established in the scientific body of knowledge. There are no effective means other than enclosing the entire pickleball court in a well-designed building of reducing the noise emitted by the pickleball courts, such as noise walls, barriers, or screens. Although these types of solutions are frequently suggested, they are not effective for reasons of fundamental physics and will not reduce the noise to acceptable levels. Excuse me. Thornton has completed over 1,500 projects of similar nature since 1972. 17-7-4.10.A.3 states that conditional uses cannot be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. This application fails this standard. Number 2, fencing / screening. 17-7-4A-9 and parking 7-7-4.7C1.A. The applicant must screen the lot or drive. I don't see where required screening is proposed. 3, parking is not allowed in the front setbacks. The buildings along the new private street comply with the setback requirements from the new street, but in that front setback, they propose guest parking, which does not comply. 4, it appears that there is an opportunity to create a pedestrian and possible future auto connection to the north stubbing to Copper. There may be a gap in property ownership, but the property to the north is under improved and may redevelop in the future. Missing this connection opportunity is not very forward thinking. Thank you for your consideration, Nick Stearns, Reindeer Holdings, LLC.
Have we received any other comments?
Yeah, Janet has a few, but she's muted.
Yeah. Okay. This is Lee Kafusi. Remove this. Currently, we have several cars belonging to residents that park on the driveway we would be sharing. With this development, the option to park there would be gone, forcing cars out onto Holden Street, which is becoming more and more busy due to the new apartments and developments on Bingham Junction. Is it possible to adjust the plan at this point to provide parking for Mystic Cove 1 residents so that those who utilize the driveway for parking would be able to keep their cars off of Holden Street if needed? And another concern is that we use that driveway to back in and out of our parking spaces. Due to the tightness of the parking structure, and 16 units would add around 32 additional cars up and down the driveway, making it much busier. This is a new one. Hi, committee. My name is Cade Campbell. I live at 7815 Holden Street, the property directly north to the proposed property development. My wife and I are in favor of the development of this property, as we believe it will add value to our community. The current lot is unattractive and is used every day as a shortcut for kids and workers to get from Holden Street to Main Street, despite our attempts to call them out. Although we understand that construction will be done in the event this is approved, we are willing to accept the noise and busyness. We are also happy to share the road because the plans look very nice and we believe it would invite great families to our neighborhood. Our feeling around the Mystic Cove property is that most are in favor of these plans because we know it would increase the value of our current home. Additionally, the plans involve upgrading parts of our own property as part of this construction, such as adding a small wall in front and removing the unnecessary wall at the back east end of the property. Thanks for your time, Cade Campbell. We live directly south of the property. As of now, we have no negative concerns for this project. We hope they are going to remove the large trees along their south property line. Wayne Sharp, thank you. I support the new development on Holden Street as a homeowner within the Mystic Cove HOA. I think the new development will enhance the area and I like how well it will incorporate with our existing neighborhood. These existing plans have been discussed with all eligible voting members of our HOA for weeks, and we did a preliminary vote that approved the planning process to go forward. I would rather see more single-family townhouse developments than apartments to keep traffic down. Plus, providing our HOA units access to shared amenities is a great bonus for those of us in the Mystic Cove community. The shared driveway will provide us a private and quiet walkable drive with a community feel. Sierra Hoffer. I live in the back property where there will be a large amount of cosmetic and landscaping work done adjacent to my property. I work full-time and run various projects and developments from home. I worry about the disruption of the privacy, sound, and construction that will occur for months as this is being developed. What is going to be done to minimize disruption to the current residents of Holden Street? Alex Bowden. As a resident of Mystic Cove Condominium HOA that will be impacted by the Holden development, I state that it's vital that the new development not reduce the number of parking spaces available to Mystic Cove residents. It's not completely clear from the Holden Townhome Concept PDF that all existing parking spaces will be preserved. Parking is already very tight to our residents. Will any additional parking spaces be available as part of the Holden Townhomes that can be used by visitors to the Mystic Cove condominiums? This would ease traffic congestion and prevent visitors from parking in the long driveway. Thank you, Sherry Vance. And that's everything from me.
Chair, I haven't seen any more come in either, but those last few that Jana read have all come in the last hour. So it might be worth leaving it open a minute longer to see if any more trickle in.
Yeah, I think we'll keep the public hearing open for just a couple more minutes, see if we get any other.
So while we're doing that, can I just ask, so would we require that they do get approval from the HOA to access all that private street? I'm kind of confused by that a little bit.
Yeah, I have a rough draft of a agreement between them. And so, I mean, the way it was presented to me that had been talked about all along and designed with, like I first had spoken with the HOA president at the beginning of this process.
Jana, maybe you should jump to your recommended conditions of approval. That was one of the ones that was listed.
Mm-hmm. So that access agreement is a requirement.
Perfect, thank you. Never mind. I was pretending to be chair again, so.
Commissioner Smallwood, do you have a comment?
No, not at all. I was just gonna ask if there had been any more come in yet.
Any more
But
comments?
that's for you to do.
Having seen or heard any new comments, take a motion to close the public hearing.
I will make a motion to close the public hearing. This is Colleen.
I'll second it.
Okay, the public hearing has been closed. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant or for Jana?
You want to take a roll call for that?
Oh, yes, sorry. Kate, can we do a roll call? Thanks.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Castillo.
Yes.
Okay, now the public hearing is closed. Any comments for either Jana or the applicant? Or questions?
I think it looks like a really nice project. I really like that there was what, 4 positives, and some of them were from people that live right adjacent or on the street. That encourages me. That's all I really have to say. I think it does look really good. Mr. Winder, I think that I like that there are sidewalks that connect to the amenities, to the street. I think that's good. I think that's important. So.
And I would agree with Mr. Smallwood's comments.
And I have no questions.
I don't think I have a question, just more of a comment where I can understand the change if you've had that private drive kind of to yourself and now it's going to be shared. I can understand that. But I think the solutions and the increased amenities can help with that. Just so that people understand, I hear you. That's all.
All right, well, I'll just go ahead and make a motion then. I move that we approve the request for a conditional use permit and preliminary site plan for a 16-unit multifamily residential project at 7835 South Holden Street and adopt the conditions of approval presented in the staff report.
And I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Castillo,
Yes.
and Commissioner Smallwood.
Yes.
Okay, that is approved.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That gets us to agenda item 4, which is a public hearing on zoning ordinance text amendment, citywide text amendment modifying development standards in MS-FBC zone. Heber Slabbert of AJC Architects and city staff are the applicants. Alex Murphy will present on behalf of staff.
Great, thanks, Chair. Let me just share my screen here real quick. I didn't do a fancy presentation for this one because the text amendment presentations are always boring. So we'll go through this line by line and you can talk about any questions you might have. So Mr. Slabbert is the architect for a unified fire on their new fire station that's being built in the Main Street area. And as we've been working with them on that project, there have been some concerns raised by his team about what the form-based code requires and how it relates to fire stations in particular. As we've worked through it, we've identified other areas that we found didn't necessarily work in reality or were areas where there were typos or other things that we wanted to fix. So Mr. Slabbert's the architect or the applicant that started this all, but staff is on the list because we've added a few things to the discussion that we wanted to get changed in the code. So here's a map of the form-based code boundary. This was adopted last January by the council. We haven't really seen a whole lot of new development activity happening in the form-based code neighborhood. I attribute that to the pandemic. We did hear a bunch back in last spring that the pandemic was putting projects on hold in this neighborhood in particular. But we're starting to see some more things ramp up. So hopefully we'll have more to discuss about that in the future. For this particular project, there's kind of 3 categories of changes that are proposed. There's changes that are specific to fire stations and are needed to address some operational concerns that fire stations have that are unique to their use and don't really apply to uses generally. There are corrections to things like errors or typos or missed items that should have been in the code and weren't. And then there are modifications to existing standards to reflect hopefully what is more realistic or more likely to actually be built and used. So I'm just going to run through what we've put together for you here. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or Garrett or Mr. Slabbert. We're all here to answer them. So in the use language, we've added some language here that would exempt fire stations from specific building design requirements. This includes allowing the fire stations to be outside of the standard build-to zone and corner occupations. So the buildings don't need to be up on the street or on the corner like they normally would be. This allows them to have extra driveway space and garage doors so that they can have those pull-through equipment garages that fire stations need to have for their apparatus. It allows some exceptions to parking and landscaping requirements because they do have a little bit of a unique use when it comes to this neighborhood in particular. And then a reduction in overall building height and the opportunity to use some other landscaping things to deal with visibility concerns. Some of these, the first couple, the garage doors, wider driveways, those were already in the form-based code. We've just relocated them here to make it make more sense. Those provisions were in the definitions previously, and this just relocates them into uses where it seems to fit better. Police stations have kind of the same thing. The garage doors and the driveway widths were already allowed in the code, but we've added the opportunity for them to have visitor parking as well. I have no reason to believe that a police station will come into the Main Street neighborhood, but it's been listed as an allowed use, and we wanted to make sure that it stayed there so that if Unified decided that they wanted to open a new precinct, we had some provisions in place to make sure that it fit in the neighborhood. On the open space side, this is where we see some of the changes to make things a little more realistic. You can see there's just a couple changes in here to seating and bicycle facility calculations. These changes are kind of propagated throughout all of the open space types. So you'll see them in Pocket Park, Town Plaza, and Park open space. As we've been working with Mr. Slabbert on the design for the fire station, there's been some talk about also doing public spaces like parks, pocket parks, or similar things. And when we actually calculated it out at the original numbers, things like a seat every 200 square feet results in more seats than you will ever see actual people in the space. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to have more seats than people because they're never going to get used. So we dropped that a little bit. Same with bicycle facilities. Having a rack at every 500 square feet or so means that you have more racks than people, more likely. And even if everybody showed up on a bike, we'd have more racks than we needed to fill those spaces. So we dropped it a little bit, but then also added a minimum requirement so that there's always going to be space available, and then added a bicycle repair station at a certain size so that there's a little bit more of an incentive for people to use bicycles as a transportation option to visit these facilities. These changes are, as I mentioned, taken throughout all of the open space types. So here's town plot or town square. You can see seating is the same increase to 1 per 500 square feet. Bike rack as well. Bike racks have additional racks or stations, repair stations, that's what I want to say. Additional repair stations required for the larger facilities. So once we start getting like over an acre and a half or so, then we want to see more of those repair facilities so that people have more reason to get there. This one also had a change to the tree requirement. As we were plotting it out, 1 tree per 400 square feet works nicely in landscape areas where you don't expect there to be any people. But as soon as you start putting in plaza space and still requiring that standard across the whole plaza, that means you have trees everywhere and you don't really have a plaza because you have to put trees in. So we think that this change, dropping some of these requirements, will be helpful in actually creating public spaces for people to use. On the park side, there's the same things, the seating, trees, and bicycle facility standards. We also added clarification that parks can be constructed by any government entity for public use instead of just the city or the county. This would allow Unified or Unified Police, Unified Fire, or any other public organization that wants to build a park with their facility to do it, as long as it meets the rest of the park standards. It does also have a maintenance requirement so that we can ensure that these facilities are being maintained basically the same as any other landscape area in the neighborhood district, this is actually one of our higher maintenance standards in the zoning ordinance. So we think that this is a good way to make sure that those spaces remain in good condition for the public to use. There's no requirement here for who maintains it. So there's an opportunity for the city to take over maintenance if the council and public works agree to it, or for the property owner or developer to maintain it. But as long as it's open to the public, it can still be allowed. In the landscaping section, we've added an additional prohibited tree. Flowering pears are ones that the council have been complaining about and that I have waged a personal crusade to ensure never happen in public areas because they tend to be stinky and gross, usually. In the spring, they look really pretty, but they don't smell that great. And then in the fall and the winter, they drop a ton of berries and trash on the sidewalks below them when they're used in public areas. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear that we did not want to see those along streets. If they're in landscape areas, they're fine because they're a little more protected from people being under them and having to deal with the downsides of those trees. But along streets, we didn't want to see them. And then we also clarified in here that the only areas that can have landscaping in the form-based code are the areas that are defined as landscape areas in the form-based code. The intent here is to say that we don't want to have landscaping as kind of a general fill-in when people don't want to do buildings. We want buildings in the form-based code neighborhood. We want to have as much activity, as much square footage, as much people as we can in that space. And so we're really, the intent was always to limit the amount of parking and limit the amount of landscaping on any given project so that the amount of building could be maximized. So we've just added a clarification in here that says only these landscape areas are allowed. Those landscape areas are parking lot frontage buffers, which are between parking lots and streets where that's allowed. Parking lot interior landscaping, which is our islands that we require in other zones. And then side and rear landscape buffers, which are just landscape areas along those side and rear property lines. Those aren't really changing, although we have made a couple typo corrections in here to make sure that the language is consistent throughout the document. So on the side and rear landscape buffer, there's a couple other changes in here as well. We always had listed in here that there's a hedge or a fence option, but we never said that one of them are actually required. So we've added the clarification that that is required, either the fence or the hedge. You don't have to do both, but you've got to pick one. And then we've clarified that trees are only required when the landscape buffer is at least 10 feet wide. This is so that we don't end up having trees crammed into little tiny spaces, because we want buildings at property lines. And so people can put the landscape buffers in if they want. They're not required to, but we don't want to make it worse for that landscape area by saying, you know, you've got a 5-foot landscape spot. You have to figure out how to fit a tree in there that's going to survive for as long as this building is here. So we've widened that up to say that those trees are only required when the landscape buffer is at least 10 feet wide. That gives them space to grow, for their roots to spread out without damaging sidewalks or buildings or fences or neighboring buildings. And allows us to have a little bit more flexibility with where the building goes and without needing to consider landscaping. Last option is, or in this section that is we've added an opportunity to put a sidewalk in that landscape buffer that allows us to have access around buildings and not just landscape areas. We can only do the sidewalk with the fence option, so we're not going to get somebody putting a hedge and a sidewalk within a really tiny space. But this will just give us a little easier access around those buildings when the property boundaries get tight. In the parking section, we've added, we've modified this. It used to say parking is to be determined by the community development director. That's a really hard standard for us to work with for police and fire stations. There's not really a general standard for that. So what we've proposed instead is to use the office standard as our maximum parking calculation, but exclude equipment storage garages. So because that we feel is probably the most applicable parking standard that we'll see. It is a maximum still, and we're looking at the equivalent of a maximum of 5 stalls per 1,000 square feet, which is a pretty high calculation. We doubt that we'll ever see somebody actually trying to use that for a police or fire station, but we wanted to have a number in here so that it's clear what the maximum actually is, instead of just requiring us to figure something out, almost pulling a number out of thin air in some cases. In the signage language, this is another one that's a staff addition. This, you might have noticed if you've driven by City Hall over the last few months that there's a new sign out front, in front of the building. It's an electronic message center. It's pretty big, and it was deliberately designed that way so that people could see it on Holden and that it fit with the City Hall property layout. But to do it, the council adopted it
in the middle of the night.
What was that?
I can read it in the middle of the night. Shines bright in my bedroom.
Yes, I have heard that complaint, and I'm working on dealing with that one. But to get that sign in place on the timeline that we had when it was being funded, the council adopted a temporary sign ordinance that would allow larger monument signs for larger properties in the form-based code neighborhood. So this is adopting those same standards permanently. What it would allow is a monument sign that's up to 9 feet tall and up to 75 square feet on its face, where the previous ones were smaller. You can see them down here. Let's see, it would allow multiple monument signs on a single frontage. It would allow, changeable signs, additional design requirements like seating and such. And double-sided signs, but they would have to be on a property that has a frontage or a lot width of at least 600 feet. So this is pretty limited. We won't see a whole lot of these, but they are an option for anybody that assembles larger property, or in the case of City Hall, our city center design. I haven't heard a whole lot of, aside from the brightness at night complaints, I haven't heard a whole lot else. It seems like people really like the sign that we have out there, so it's working as intended on the temporary ordinance, and we're just adding it here to make it permanent. Lastly, we've added a few definitions. Bicycle rack is necessary to ensure that we actually know what is required in those open space areas for bicycle racks. It's a pretty basic definition, but it does require space for at least 2 bikes per rack. So when we say there's a minimum of 3 racks for any open space project, that means space for at least 6 bikes. It's a pretty good number, we feel. We think that that'll give enough opportunity for people to use it, but not so much that it's overbearing. We have too many racks that aren't ever used. We have also some definitions that were missed in the original adoption of the code. So this facade bay fenestration feature, and then the major and minor division features are elements that were in the form-based code when we were discussing it with the council and the planning commission back in 2019. but didn't make it into the final document. And they are things that are called out in the building type section. So each building type is required to have a certain number and type of each of these features. And without the definition that defines what they are, it's been really hard for us to tell people what they need to do to satisfy that requirement. So this is basically taking what was supposed to be installed in the first place and adding it now. So that's, let's see. And then there's a change to police and fire to move those uses out of the definition and into the use section. So that's the text amendment that we're working with tonight. We, at the staff level, like I said, we've been working with Mr. Slaubert to address the fire station's concerns, and we're satisfied with how this has come out. We think that it warrants approval, and we'd recommend that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to approve it to the City Council. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Garrett, do you have anything to add on this?
So this is a legislative action. This is, especially with the text amendment, this is where we're coming to the Planning Commission, asking specifically for your input to make sure that this is what will be in the best interest of the city and to help us have the best product for everyone involved. So any input is certainly welcome. If you think that the overall recommendations provided by Alex and with UFA would improve this, then we hope that you provide a positive recommendation. If there's things that you would like to see changed, you can table this or whatnot, or provide a negative recommendation to the City Council.
Thank you, Garrett. Does the applicant have anything that they would like to add to Alex's presentation? No? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't. I thought you had to unmute me. I was just going to say it's. I was waiting. I was just going to say it's been a very positive experience working with Alex. We've spent the last 3 months trying to go back and forth and maintain the integrity of the form-based code as best we can, while ensuring that a future fire station could operate safely and not have decreased response time. So we've been very happy with the way that this text amendment's gone, and we look forward to any questions you might have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant or for Alex?
I don't have any.
Well, then I guess we'll open this up for public hearing. This is the portion of the agenda that allows any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, or issues. If you would like to comment on a public hearing item, you will be allotted time during this portion of the meeting. Please email your comments to Alex Murphy at amurphy@midvale.com. We will not be taking public comment on the Facebook or YouTube feeds. When commenting, please limit your comments to 400 words or the equivalent of 3 minutes. Please include your first and last name, include your city of residence if you wish, and include the name of the agenda item. City staff will only read into the record the equivalent of 3 minutes, so please be concise with your statements. With that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Have we received any comments?
We have not. No comments on this one.
Well, we'll leave this open for a minute or two and see if we get any. Would anyone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Kate, can we please get a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
Yes.
Commissioner Smallwood.
Yes.
The public hearing has now been closed. Does the commission have anything they'd like to discuss regarding this text amendment?
No, I don't.
I do not. So I am going to move that we forward a recommendation to the city council to adopt the proposed text amendment to modify development standards in the MSFBC.
I would second that. Oh,
It's a motion has been made and it's been seconded. Kate, can we please get a roll call vote?
Yes. Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Costello,
yes.
Commissioner Smallwood,
Yes.
and Commissioner Erickson.
Yes.
With that, we'll go ahead and make a positive recommendation to the city council. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that takes us to agenda item number 5, which is an action item. Gables Phase 3, it's amended condominium, 7035 South, 7th East, amended condominium plat, single family 1, DO zone. Russ Platt is the applicant. Alex Murphy will present for staff. Alex, you're up.
Great. All right, just giving Russ a second to join us. So this is admittedly one of the more unusual requests that I've had to deal with here. Let me just share my screen real quick. So the Gables was a project that was approved by Salt Lake County back in the late 70s, early 80s on 7th East. It's somewhere around 70 units overall that were approved in 3 phases. In the last phase, which was approved in 1983, actually, we'll put it this way. So here you can see the overall project. In the last phase that was approved in 83, there were 14 units that never got built. And I don't know why that happened, but my assumption is there was some economic downturn in the mid 80s that I wasn't around for. And the units ended up being abandoned for a while, but they were platted out, they were approved. Salt Lake County had approved them, and they just never were built. So we annexed the area in the late 90s. And then at some point between the late 90s and now, the city determined that the units were still valid units. They were platted, they were approved, they could still be built, but we would need to address, at least at a minimum, the health and life safety concerns that would come about from a new development if those units were ever built. So Mr. Platt has brought an application to the city to finish those units up, but the design that he has, while very similar to what was built in the 70s and 80s, is a little different, and it does require amending the condo plat for this project. So plat amendments get an abbreviated review process. There's a few things that have to work in their favor for it to actually obtain that process, but I'll go through them real quick. In order for a plat amendment to be approved, these 3 findings need to be made. The amendment needs to be consistent with the general plan. It can't hurt a member of the public, and there needs to be good cause. To do a plat amendment, we only hold a public hearing if, after we send out notice, we receive word that somebody objects to the proposed amendment, or in the case of the Planning Commission, we only hold a public hearing in that event. In the case of the council review, we'll hold a public hearing if we don't have everybody that owns property on the plat as a signer on the plat. So for this meeting, we've sent out the notice that we're required to do. It's required to state what's happening, provide an opportunity to object, and then indicate the date that a meeting will be held if any objections are received. We did not receive any objections despite the notice going out to close to 200 individuals overall. So we're here tonight with this as just an action item for the council or the Planning Commission to consider as a plat amendment. If the Planning Commission forwards a recommendation to approve it, this will go to the council, and it will have to be in a public hearing in front of the council because we don't have everybody that owns property on the plat signing off on it. But I expect that it will probably receive about the same amount of response when it comes time to hear those public comments. So for the request that we have, these are the 3 criteria that we need to satisfy. Here's a comparison of the 2 plats. And you can see the original plat in 83 was a little larger. And it covers kind of that northwestern quadrant of the Gables project as a whole. The amended plat only covers the area for the units that haven't been built yet. So the existing units will stay as is. It does modify common area, and that's that's why we have to have that public hearing in front of the council. But it basically keeps the same footprints for the units. It just expands them to actually cover the garage spaces that were originally intended to be built there anyway. So there is a reduction of about 400 square feet per unit in common area space. But when we look at how the project was built out, it really doesn't result in a net loss in common area that's usable common area. As far as those 3 criteria are concerned, the general plan calls this area a stability area. So it's intended to be developed as is. It will see some infill development, but it won't see drastic changes in the style or type of development that are in there. This is the same type of development that was approved in the Gables previously and what's been built out. We're just making sure that it finishes as it was originally intended to be built out. We haven't heard any reason to believe that the public or a person will be injured by this proposed request. The fact that we sent out notices to so many people, particularly regarding that common area, and received no comments in return, leads us to believe that nobody has any objections to the proposal. And then there is good cause because we want to make sure that the area gets built out. We want to see some additional units added in the neighborhood throughout the city to address some of our housing needs. And then this change is necessary to actually see that these units are built as they were originally intended to be built. So I've been working with Mr. Platt on a site plan review, and that factors into some of the conditions that I've recommended here. What we want to see is that site plan review is finished before any construction begins. And we're getting close to wrapping that up. And then we want to see that the plat gets revised to respond to the comments that were already obtained from the fire marshal and city engineer. We sent it out using the same process we do for every plat and got a few technical corrections to be made, but nothing significant that warrants delaying or denying the request. And then we want to make sure that the declaration for the HOA that's already in place is applied on this plat as well. We want to see that gets recorded and attached to this property as required to make sure that it functions as part of the overall project. So it's a pretty straightforward request in our eyes, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is, as Garrett will mention, administrative, not legislative, but I won't steal his thunder.
Garrett, do you have anything to add to this?
Alex stole my thunder, so I'll just add a ditto to that. And if you guys have any specific questions about what that entails, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Garrett. Is Mr. Platt available?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to Mr. Murphy's presentation?
Only that I've worked very closely with the community there at the Gables. Been to several meetings. We're going to do some substantial, I don't want to say facelift. We're going to be adding to the existing community as well, helping with the existing clubhouse, making the pool area nicer, helping with some landscape and fencing throughout the full project, not just the area that we're building in.
Thank you, Mr. Platt. Commissioners, do you have any questions for either Mr. Platt or Mr. Murphy at this time?
I don't.
Not.
Do you want me to make a motion?
If you'll go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay. I move that we adopt the findings and conditions of approval presented in the staff report recommending the city council approve the condominium plat for the amended Gables Phase 3 condominium with conditions. Now, do you want me to read the findings and conditions, or is that?
Nope, they're there just so that you have an easy reference.
Okay. So I make that recommendation.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Costello.
Yes.
Right. Commissioner Smallwood.
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll go ahead and forward a positive recommendation to the city council. Thank you. With that, we have one last agenda item on our agenda, and that is a staff update. Alex, it's you.
Great. I don't know how you guys feel about the staff updates, but I like them because I like having the opportunity to talk about what's going on and give you kind of an update how we're working here, and then also give you a chance to ask me any questions that you need. So feel free to tell me to shut up at any time if you want me to. Okay, so we are scheduled. Well, I can't do that.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
We are scheduled to have a second meeting in March. We've got 3 items on that agenda right now. So plan on having a special meeting on the 24th. We do not have any applications for April. So there's a better than not chance that we will have no meeting in April. I might still come up with something if I have the bandwidth to do it. We've got a few text amendments that are kind of waiting in the wings and discussions.
Don't come up with things. There's no reason to come up with things. My goodness.
I want to make sure that you feel like you're being an integral part of the process in the community.
But are we back in the building since we're moderate now?
So actually, Matt Dahl is going to be talking to the council about returning to in-person meetings next week. So there's a chance, and I don't know whether this is a slim or a great chance, but there's a chance we'll be back to in-person meetings in April if we have a meeting. So we'll find out more next Tuesday when he has that conversation with the council. I'll give you guys a heads up when that happens, when I know what's happening. So keep an eye out for that, say on Wednesday or so, and I'll give you an idea where we're at.
I think like 4 of us are vaccinated, I think. So that's good.
Yes, but not everybody on the public or everybody on the staff will be. So, Matt was going to propose several public health and safety measures to handle those meetings, things like spacing out people more, limiting seating capacity, providing an overflow option if we have a meeting with particularly large attendance or something like that. But we'll see what the council wants to do when they have that discussion next week. If you haven't heard already, I can't recall if I mentioned this in Planning Commission or not. Our city manager, Kane Loader's retiring at the end of this month. So his last council meeting is next week on the 16th. And then I think his last day is, I can't recall what day it is, the end of this month. So if you want to pass along any messages, it'd be a good time to do it. We have yet to start the process to replace him. So I think Matt will be filling in the meantime as the council deliberates on how they want to replace Kane after he's gone. But I just wanted to make sure you were all aware that he was retiring and had an opportunity to reach out if you so desired. Other than that, everything here is proceeding apace. We've got many projects that we're reviewing at the staff level. It looks like things are maybe slowing down a little bit as far as planning commission meetings are concerned, since we don't have anything for April yet. But we're staying very busy behind the scenes. Any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, complaints? Let me see where it's going to come up with. Anything you want me to look into?
A Cafe Rio drive-through by my house, which is pretty awesome.
in the
So
works.
that's
Yep.
also kind of terrifying for stacking and queuing, but
A Cafe Rio?
Yes, the old Dunkin' Donuts spot in Bingham Junction is
Oh,
in the middle of being converted into a drive-through cafeteria.
whoa.
Yep. We also have let's see, next to R&R, we've got a site plan that was just approved for a 2-tenant building. So you'll see construction start on that probably in the next month or two.
woohoo.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, Chair, I'll give it back to you to wrap up.
Commissioners, if we don't have any other things to discuss, I think we should adjourn this meeting, and it is 7:39.
I move that we adjourn at 7:39.
I second it. Amen.
Any
God bless.
opposed? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See you all. Bye.